Hello and welcome back to International Yankee English. We are a global community of English learners and we specialize in academic and business English courses. Check the description box for more details below as we open up today's video, which is lesson 3 of 6 for the Cambridge English IGCSE Literature and English course. Let's begin. Today we will be looking at part 3 of the course book. This is called Building Your Skills, Prose. This begins on page 64. Today we will be covering units 7 through 11. If you're currently enrolled in the EdNext course, please check the Moodle online area to see what assignments you have been given. If you are not enrolled in any specific course and would like some information about upcoming course enrollment options, please send me an email. My email is linked in the description box below. There may be a waiting list at the moment. If you are enrolled in one of the courses that I am affiliated with, there will be loads of supplementary material there for you, and there will be discussion forum areas where you can ask questions and discuss with other students as well. Let's have a look at the learning outcomes on page 64 for the first unit that we are looking at today. That is unit 7. You can look here at one definition of prose, and here are 2 additional ones for you. Prose is written or spoken language in its ordinary form without metrical structure, or it is a form of language that exhibits a natural flow of speech and grammatical structure rather than a rhythmic structure, as in traditional poetry. So that is how it varies, prose versus poetry. Now let's take a look at the next page, page 65. Notes: both of the definitions that I just gave you state that prose does not have metrical or rhythmic structure. That is what makes it different from poetry. So if you were not sure about the difference, review that and put that down in your notes for a quick difference between prose and poetry. While prose literature is the most common and popular form of literature today, it can easily be purchased at the drop of a hat by simply clicking one button on your tablets. It has gone through so many changes over the years. For example, in the Victorian era, very long pieces of prose were the most popular. Sometimes bits and pieces of these long texts would be released in monthly installments, shorter versions, so that you would not read through the entire piece of literature at once. One such example of a monthly installment is the work Oliver Twist. The perk of having such installments in monthly bits and pieces were that you could always kind of end the last bit, the last few words, with what is called a cliffhanger. Cliffhanger is a very popular literary device which leaves you just enough information that you're really immersed in the story and you want to know more, but it stops there and you have to wait until you have a moment to either read further, or you have to wait until the next monthly installment, or you have to wait for the next part of a book series, for example. This is also commonly used in TV series today when you have episodes of a television show. So basically, a cliffhanger leaves you in suspense and wanting more. Okay, let's have a look now at topics in literary prose. Here are some topics that are very popular in prose. In most cases, novels, especially longer ones, will touch on a range of issues including personal, gender, and social identity. All of the topics mentioned here are explored in George Eliot's 1861 novel, Silas Marner. George Eliot was actually a male pen name used by the female author Mary Ann Evans, a common practice for women at the time. Let's move on now to page 67. As we move on to Unit 7.1, Developing Your Skills to Respond to Prose, make sure to review the terms that we learned in Part 2 of this course in Lesson 2. I will link that in the description box below in case you have not previously watched it, or if it's been a while and you need to watch it again. Here's a list of some important terms that you need to understand when you are studying prose. Knowing the gist or general idea of these terms will not bode well for you on your exams, so be sure to study them and practice using them in your exercise responses. This goes hand in hand with the active learning skills we addressed in Lesson 1, and some more tips are given on page 67 of your coursebook. It is not enough to identify the devices prose writers use, but you must analyze them and their effects as well. The key analysis skills learned in this part of the course can be found on pages 67 and 68 of your course book. These include the beginning of novels and short stories, how plots are developed, how characters are presented, how themes are explored, how settings are created, how mood is conveyed, how events are sequenced, and how narrative viewpoint is used to tell a story. Let's move on to page 69 now. Be sure to complete the progress check in the self-evaluation before you go further. Okay, moving on to Unit 8, starting on page 70. Here we are responding to characters. The learning outcomes of this unit will be displayed on the screen. Let's take a look at Roald Dahl's short story, The Hitchhiker. Let's turn now to page 71, where we can look at an extract of this story. Here we are looking at 3 different characters. We have the third-person narrator, the driver. Then we have the hitchhiker. The hitchhiker has a notable non-standard English dialect. And then we have the policeman. I have a challenge for you now. If you are a part of the EdNext course, or any course for that matter, I want you to get together with your classmates. For the EdNext students in the discussion forum on Moodle is where this can be done. Or if you're not enrolled in a course, you can use the comment section below on this video. Take a look at Activity 1 on page 73 and put your answers either in the comment section below or in the discussion forum area on Moodle for EdNext. Look at lines 1 through 4 of this extract. What are your first impressions of the policeman here? What do these lines tell you about the policeman? Write a concise answer of no more than 3 sentences. So think about it well, formulate your thoughts, and reread it before you comment on it. Be sure to provide evidence from Dahl's writing in your answer within those 3 sentences. Check the example of a quotation used there so that you can see how it is done. How do you use evidence from the writer within your answer? Take a close look at Activity 2 if you're feeling a bit stuck so you can be inspired as you write your answer. When you're done with that, make sure that you commented here below on this video, or if you're in the EdNext course, that you upload it on Moodle in the discussion forum for this part of the course. Now let's move on to page 74. Please take a look at the key term here. The key term is dialogue. Make sure that this is included in your vocabulary list and that you have a good understanding of what this word means, as you will need it in order to respond to prose. For my EdNext students, please be sure that you complete the following activities and that you upload your answers in the online area in order to get feedback. In order to improve your answers and to do well on this exam, you do have to share your work, whether it's with other students or it's with a teacher directly or within a class. You need to share your work with others and get feedback on it in order to see if your responses are clear and if they are really analytical or not. Before we move on, I would like you to note down the key term direct speech. Direct speech refers to the words actually spoken by the characters. Usually, this can be seen with the use of inverted commas or quotation marks around the words that the characters speak. Okay, I have a second challenge for you guys. Do you know what the word narrative means? Do you know what the word plot means? Without looking, go ahead and write your definition in the comments below, and I will let you know whether those are correct definitions or not, and point you in the right direction if they are not correct definitions. Be sure to check back to see if I responded to your comment, but also you can go ahead to page 81 in your course book and look at the definitions there. And as always, before you move on to the next unit, please do the self-evaluation and the progress check. That can be found on page 83 of your book. Before diving into Patrick O'Brien's Samphire on pages 74 and 75, make sure to do activities 3, 4, and 5. As we move on, you will find another mind map activity at the top of page 78 in your course book. I highly encourage you to actually do this activity. This is important in order to dissect O'Brien's words and to really truly understand his prose. You have to understand how the writers that you have in your exams use these tools that we talk about and these terms that we define in the course and workbook. The next text that we explore is a very interesting one that looks at the topic paranoia. There are some similarities here to O'Brien's Samphire, such as the woman in an unhappy marriage. Another similarity is that there is no real introductory paragraph here, so it is interesting to see that there are some similarities, but this text is much longer, so it does require much more careful reading than Samphire does. So make sure that you have enough time to really devote to reading and studying the text before you sit down to read it. It is not one to do within a 10-15 minute break in between your classes. You want to make sure that you have a good chunk of time set aside to really read and take notes on this text before you go ahead and read it. Make sure you are also in a quiet place with few to no distractions as you read it. So these key terms, narrative and plot, narrative being the way in which a story is told, and plot the storyline. In case you haven't already written the comments below, there are your answers, but these are really important for you to note down, and make sure that you truly understand these terms without having to go back into your notes and read them again to know what they mean. This will help you when you are taking your test and you are trying to actually explain your answers very clearly and quickly. If you take time just to sit there thinking about what was that called, what was this one again, you're going to waste a lot of time, and the likelihood that you will write a concise and analytical answer drops significantly. So make sure that these important key terms are really known to you, that just in the moment you see them, you know immediately what they mean and how they are used by these writers. These two terms, plot and narrative, are particularly important as you begin the activity on page 81 of your course book. As always, do the follow-up, self-evaluation, and progress check before you move on to the next unit. I'm going to put again on the screen the learning outcomes for the next unit, Unit 9. I would like, before you move on, to spend a few minutes to think about the key term mood. This can be found on page 85 of your course book. Mood is created by writers through their use of description and dialogue. Another word for mood is atmosphere. Free write on this topic now about what you think mood is. How can a writer show mood or explain mood or set the mood or create an atmosphere? Okay, so free writing means that you simply take out a pen and paper or open a blank document on your computer, a Word doc, and just write everything that comes to your mind in whichever order you would like, explaining the meaning of this term, mood. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below on this video, or of course, if you are a student in the EdNext course, go ahead and share it in the discussion forum there. I do encourage that you set your timer for anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes approximately, so that you don't spend too much time on it, but that you give your brain enough time to kind of create some thoughts and to get the creative juices flowing. Okay, let's have a look now at The Siege by Helen Dunmore. This British poet creates a vivid picture of the setting. See the key term box on page 86, and notice that there is no dialogue here. Check the photo on page 87 and think about the words there. Think about how they are used to convey a similar scene for the reader. And before you move on to complete the activities on page 88, take a good look at the key term called tense. Check if you truly understand the different English tenses and their nuances. Understanding English grammar and the tenses in English grammar are important to understanding the true meaning of prose. So you should have a good handle on these English tenses, and if you don't, I will put here in the cards and then will be linked in the description box below a video explaining all of the English tenses and their nuances. So please review that if you realize that you are struggling to understand English tenses. Let's move on now to page 89. Here we will explore setting and mood a bit further. Let's look at the short story, The Young Couple. Please carefully consider the vocabulary words in the margins and see if you truly understand them. Words such as tyranny or tyranny on page 91. Tyranny means cruel or unreasonable use of control. Take a look at this further and look at some example sentences online if you are not sure how to use this. On to Unit 10 now, starting on page 94. Let's take a look at the learning objectives and outcomes. Now we have Studies in the Park on page 95. As always, carefully review the vocabulary before you read this text. After closely reading the text, please check the tip on page 98. The tip regarding highlighting and the key terms stream of consciousness and rhetorical questions are vital for your understanding of the text and also in order to write a clear, concise response to the questions on your exam. So make sure you understand these terms, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below or to write in the question and answer section on Moodle. Let's have a look now at the orange box on page 99. Next, we will look at a work by D.H. Lawrence where we look at the first person narrative. Complete the activities on page 102 with care, including the extension activity. Next, we will look at Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton, or Wharton, depending on who you ask. Be sure to take your time as you read this extract. Complete the activities and wrap up Unit 10's self-evaluation and progress check. These different examples show the different narratives, first person and third person, for example, and it is important to note the differences between these and how the authors use these different tools in their prose. You will be expected to know the differences between these different narratives, first person and third person, for example. This brings us to Unit 11. Here we are working on developing an informed personal response, the goal of basically the entire exam. This begins on page 108, and we will look now at the personal objectives and outcomes. Since your exam score will be marked based on your ability to personally respond to the text, it's really important to look here at this unit very carefully and to try to make sure that you have a strong understanding of all of the different tools that are used in this unit. As we look at the final prose piece of this part of the course book, you will notice that it is a complete story. Starting on page 109, you will read The Pieces of Silver by Carl Seeley. This is the longest piece we have highlighted in the course book thus far. Therefore, proper preparation and note-taking is key. Here's my advice for approaching the piece. Tip number 1. Actively look at the vocabulary in the margins and search for example sentences on the internet for any words you don't know. Tip number 2. Pay attention to the setting, introduction mood, description of the boys, words, and actions used to portray the acting. If any of these words or ideas are still unclear to you, review them before you read it. Make sure that you highlight sections that you find important or confusing, and take short breaks to note down the important topics, questions, or interesting points every 3 to 4 stanzas. As you approach the follow-up activities on page 116 and 117, be sure that you don't skip any of the activities 1 through 5, because you need to be prepared fully in order to write a critical essay response for activity 6. Therefore, completion of activities 1 through 5 is vital in order for you to excel on activity 6. Activity 6 is one of the EdNext activities that you will receive personal written feedback from me on, so please make sure to take extra care when you complete this activity. If you are not currently enrolled in a course, then I highly recommend that you put together some activities such as this one that you found difficult, and that you try to find a teacher to have at least one 1-hour lesson with, in order to kind of catch some things that you're having trouble with. You can also swap essays with some classmates of yours and try to get feedback from them as well if you're unable to enroll in a course or hire a private teacher. Be sure to always check now on page 118 for the checklist as you reread any of the texts that you previously read, or as you read any further text. This will really help you as you are going through the process of reading and studying the text in the course book. Please do not skip the extension activity. You must read longer books as well as poems and short stories, and at the very least, do some research on them and or read at least 1 to 2 chapters. My personal 3 favorite books from the list are Pride and Prejudice, Animal Farm, and Lord of the Flies. But all of the titles here on the list are really truly great. You would be doing yourself a huge disservice if you don't read these stories in full, and I understand that it is a lot of material, so you may not be able to read all of them in full, but please make sure to choose at least 3 that you can read in full and really get to know and study and analyze in depth, and then do some basic research and or read a couple of chapters of the remaining books on the list. This brings you to the end of your 3rd lesson here from our 6 video lessons on International Yankee English. Remember to also always complete the workbook exercises. Though I do not really cover those in these video lessons, those supplementary exercises are key in order to test your understanding and in order to put the information you learn in the course book to good use. And just as a reminder to my EdNext students on Moodle that there are supplementary PowerPoints and just additional PDFs and videos and extra material for you available there, and that will help further and deepen your understanding of the material presented in the course book. And if you are interested in learning about more places where you can find materials, I highly recommend looking for a course such as EdNext, or you can contact me to join my email list, and when there is an opening in a future course or I have openings for future private lessons, you will be informed then through the newsletter. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a like and make sure to come back and watch it again as needed, and to also review the previous lessons, lesson 1 and 2, as well as some of my supplementary videos on other topics or more specific deep dives on certain writers that I have in my playlist that is geared towards the Literature in English exam by Cambridge. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.